Millions of children around the world become victims of untold violence. Now, children in every country, every culture, and at every social level face various forms of abuse, neglect, exploitation, and violence. Interestingly, we're told that the abuse takes place at homes, in schools, in institutions, at work, in the community, among other places. Now, in Ghana, the story is not different. And in recent times, we have seen increasing levels of child abuse. I mean, it's so fresh in our minds how children are trafficked on the Volta Lake, how minors have been defiled and raped with impunity. We are aware of how children are giving out for marriage to men as old as their fathers and grandfathers, and the list goes on. On Children's Day today, we certainly cannot lose sight of these abuses, and of course, the theme for this year's celebration, Stop Violence Against Children, perfectly sets the tone for this evening's discussion on PM Express. You don't want to miss this. My name is Aisha Ibrahim. You'll get to know my guests who are already seated after this break. Welcome back to PM Express. We're talking a very important facet of our lives, children, and we're looking at ways of ending all forms of child abuse. My guest tonight, Christopher Latte, Senior Program Officer, Department of Children at the Ministry of Women, Children and Gender Protection, and Emilia Allen, Child Protection Specialist from UNICEF. Ladies and gentlemen, you're welcome to the show. Thank you. Let me start with the lady. They say ladies first, right? And I know your outfit has been doing a lot of research on children. We already know, I mean, the common forms of abuse. And like I mentioned earlier, we know about rape, defilement, child trafficking, early marriages. What are the other forms that we do not know?
Some of the other forms that we don't talk about, but which exist in our communities, is bullying. It's the sexual abuse, sexual harassment. We're talking about the verbal abuse. Verbal abuse is so rampant that we think it's just normal, and yet it has effects on children, psychological effects on children. We're talking about gender-based violence, adolescent violence. And I don't want to call teenage pregnancy a form of violence, but we know what it does to children. It's a form of abuse that denies the young girls of their education, of their health, their right to good health, their right to develop and be what they want to be, their full potential. Aisha, just like you and me.
Right, definitely so. But of course, we know that children are very vulnerable. We know children are special, but they're vulnerable. Let's look at your researches you've done over the years about children and all of these abuses. What could be accounting for some of these abuses?
Several of them, several factors. I don't want to start with poverty because poverty is usually blamed for everything. But I always say there are many families I know who will not traffic their children because they are poor. I know that there are many families who will not marry off their children because they are poor. So I don't want to talk about poverty. There are other factors, and some of these factors are based on our norms, our societal norms, what we are beginning to accept as normal, the abnormal that is becoming normal. And so that's one of the critical factors. Another is our tradition. Some of it, we blame them on our traditional beliefs, which are also related to gender-based norms, you know, where the girl is seen as an inferior, and that's why, okay, if I'm confronted with an issue of economic issue, I think that is the girl I must trade off first. So we have those examples. We also are looking at religious norms. And so you hear the common phrase like spare the rod and spoil the child, and other things like that. Of course, the economic factors are there. There is research that says that when people are poor, their stress levels goes up. And when the stress levels goes up, then their the patience levels are also lower, and so they are not able to listen. But one of the ones that look us in the face is just irresponsibility, parental irresponsibility or parental neglect. Right. And sometimes, Aisha, we all go to school, but no one teaches us to be parents. And so it's, you look at parenting, and I think it's a big gap in this country, how people bring up their children. Sometimes it's ignorance, so I want to give a bit of it to ignorance. But then I didn't say the lack of education, right, because I know mothers who haven't been to school, fathers who haven't been to school, but they bring up their children with a lot of, they protect them, they give them the best. So I also, while I'm saying ignorance, I'm not linking it to the levels of education, although it does play a role.
Okay. All right. You've set the tone very well. Chris, yeah, let me talk about this defilement issue. In fact, the whole country went agog when the worst happened. A 4-year-old girl has been defiled by an 18-year-old man. And one of the questions that kept coming in, what is the Ministry of Gender and Children doing about this? What is the Ministry of Gender doing about this? We know that you've put in some interventions there, but even with these interventions, you also agree that the numbers keep increasing. Yeah. What specifically is the ministry doing about defilement and rape of minors?
Yeah, thank you very much. As much as possible, we do not want to hear any of such cases happening ever again in the country. But you agree with me that as a ministry, what we do mainly is to make the legislative framework and the policy atmosphere very conk, so that we will not give room for anybody who does those things to go free. So there are 3 approaches that we want to take. Okay. As I mentioned, we want to strengthen the legislations and the policies, and then secondly, to also make sure institutions that are supposed to help take care of the children, like the social welfare, the police, the DOVSU, the Ghana Health Service, Ghana Education Service. We want to make sure that all these institutions, they are trained enough and that they have the capacity to render the services, and that the services also reach the children wherever they are. And the third one is behavioral change. Because you agree with me, no matter how good the laws are, no matter how good the policies are, if we do not change our attitudes, it's not possible to achieve our aim. Okay. And that is the reason why we want to start campaigns to make sure that everybody knows that raping or defiling a child is not good, spanking a child is not the best, and all. So these are the 3 things. We want to make sure the legislative framework is good, and then also the institutions are also capable of handling the issues.
What would you say to people, or how would you respond to concerns that, of course, you've been making interventions and probably your strategies are not working? Because if you're putting in interventions and we're still seeing increasing numbers, we must all be worried, and that you should consider revising your strategies.
Yes. It's true. That's the reason why we always want to engage our partners to see the best ways of doing it. The more we try, the more the perpetrators also find other ways. So what we are doing currently is to that we are tightening the laws. There are so many loopholes in the laws as they are now. Okay. The Criminal Code Amendment Act, the Children's Act, the Juvenile Justice Act, we are amending these laws to make the punishments a bit tighter, so that it will deter potential perpetrators from embarking on whatever they want to do. And as I mentioned earlier, all these initiatives will boil down to people knowing that children are supposed to be handled with care and with all the love. And therefore, whatever we do, the parents, caregivers are number 1 stakeholders who will have to make sure that they take care of these children and take care of them very well.
Okay. Where does this international UN Convention on the Child come in?
Yeah. In 1989, sorry, in 79 rather.
79,
Yeah,
yes.
Ghana, we signed on to the UNCRC. This convention is something that we signed on to with the promise of making Ghana a conducive environment for all children in the country.
Right.
And after that, 1979, after the signing of this UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, the then President, Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rawlings, set up the Ghana National Commission on Children in order to internalize the issues that were coming and also to gather information and report back to the UN. So after it was set up in 1979, a lot of work have been going on in our constitution. It also informed how we couched the constitution, Article 28 of the constitution. And also in 1998, we were able to come up with a Children's Act. All these were informed by the UNCRC and subsequently other laws, legislations that followed.
Have you been doing monitoring and evaluation as to whether you are really meeting, the requirements of this convention?
Of course. We report to the UN every now and then. Last year, we presented our 3rd, 4th, and 5th reports to the UN. And indeed, before we send the reports to the UN, we go around all our stakeholders, all the indicators in the convention, and we get reports from our stakeholders how we are faring. For some of the areas we are not doing very well, others too we are doing very well, and we get comments from the UN as to how they will propose that we go on with what we have to do to make sure that children are well protected. So indeed we do monitoring and evaluation all the time.
I definitely know that the UN will not pat you in the back when it comes to child abuse. It will not. The UN hasn't, giving you some very pleasant responses with regards to evaluation. We will come back to that. But Emilia, one of the huge challenges we have is child marriage. Child marriage, and I know subsequent governments have made efforts to end this, but the more the interventions come in, the more we hear that it's increasing, especially in the northern part of the country. What did your research reveal could be accounting for some of these things?
Before I tell you the reasons that account for child marriage, I want to respond to that notion that it's increasing. The research reveals contrary to that. The research is saying that child marriage in Ghana, it's coming down. In 2006, when we did research, it was higher. It was around 27%. We currently, children between 15 and 18, 20 to 24 age group who were married before the age of 18 is now 21%. Although the 3 northern regions still have high rates, some of them are coming down. So that is an effort. What the UN is saying is that the pace at which we are making progress at reducing our effort is slow. And if we did not double it because of the population growth, we will not, the numbers will go higher. And so you'll be making efforts, you'll be having, you are doing well, but it is slow and it will not be reflected in your percentages. And so we need to accelerate that kind of effort. We need to double up. I must say that in the last few years, Ghana, the government of Ghana has done very well in highlighting this. I am not surprised, Aisha, you went for child marriage because of the kind of because of the kind of awareness, it's now on everybody's lips. Our president goes to the UN, he talks about it. At the recent assembly, you saw there was a side effect that happened. It was very good. Our president had the opportunity to speak about it. He mentioned it. And I think that's the kind of effort that is listed. Now, going back to what perpetuates this, we recently just completed a study with looking at what strategies are effective and what are not. And we know that some of the factors that are contributing to child marriage, Aisha, it will surprise you. In your intro, you mentioned that children being given to older men as old as their fathers.
Exactly.
The trend is changing.
Okay.
The trend is that children are going out and getting married to their other colleagues, their peers.
That's a very good news.
So I'm not saying it's no longer there,
Yeah.
but that's going down, and it's children going off and getting married to others.
Okay.
And what we need to do is not just work with families, but we also need to work with children.
Right.
As adults, we usually think we can work for children.
Yeah.
It's good to work for children, but it's
we
better
need
to
them
work
to be involved.
Exactly.
Okay.
And so what government and some NGO partners we have engaged recently have been doing is working with children's groups in school and out of schools, and not just girls groups but boys groups as well.
Wow.
Because if our young men are to grow and to stop this phenomenon, then they should be part of the solution to it. So that kind of engagement is going on. But quickly to the factors, economic is one of them, peer pressure is one of them, another of them, of course. And Aisha, one of the things, teenage pregnancy is a push factor.
Okay.
In our tradition, a girl gets pregnant, it's an embarrassment to the family. So quickly they arrange something, go live with the man so nobody knows you are married.
Okay.
You know,
Right.
sometimes they perform the right, sometimes they don't. They just say, get out of this house.
And go and stay with the
go and
man.
stay with him. And child marriage is defined as a union.
Right.
So it doesn't matter if the performance has been done or not.
Okay.
All that is counted as well. And so that's also a push factor. We always say that teenage pregnancy is a push, but it's also a consequence also of child marriage.
I'm really excited to hear that. Of course, the trend is changing, but of course, one thing also that hurts is the fact that the pace at which we are making this progress is slow. And my question is, are we dealing with the root factors? And I know one of the root factors is the economic factors.
Yes.
Are we empowering more women? Are we educating, creating a lot of awareness to make the girl child understand that, listen, it's not all about money. Sometimes you need to explain to your parents that, listen, this decision you are taking is not in good faith. So, I mean, I'm not going to kowtow to your advice, or I'm not going to marry that old man you're asking me to marry. Are you fine-tuning the brains of these children? Have we tackled the root cause?
Rightly so. Recently, based on what has been the learning, the government of Ghana has developed a strategic framework for dealing with it. More like, and brought all stakeholders together. Like Chris mentioned, it can't just be the Ministry of Gender. The Ministry of Gender coordinates, it brings all the stakeholders together. And so the group of stakeholders, education, health, police, the judiciary, we're all on that table. And together they've developed a strategic framework which looks at what are the contributing factors and what are the strategies we need to put in place. So strategies in schools, strategies in communities, what we need to do, looking at all of that. Of course, I do know that social interventions such as the LEAP program and others are also reasons why the ministry is running this. It is running the social protection programs to reduce the vulnerability. So a mother who is at the verge of giving her daughter out in marriage because she cannot afford 3 square meals for she and all her children
Is being catered for
is catered
by
for
LEAP.
Exactly.
Okay.
A mother or a father who is thinking of giving out his child or her child to go on the Volta Lake for trafficking, if they receive this, are able to cushion them.
And the latest one I heard was a woman taking 300 cities.
Yes, and was prosecuted.
And exchanging it with a human being.
That is right. Those are the stories.
Interesting.
But the good thing is that there was prosecution. And we need to do more of these things to set the example. And that's why Chris says we are looking at the laws again. Government is looking at the laws again and reviewing and trying to make them tighter. So yes, these are some of the factors. Of course, the economic factors are there, but I always believe that in spite of the economic factors, the social norms are even stronger. Where where the economic factors exist, but the social norm is positive,
it's difficult to control.
It is difficult. It is so where the social norms are favorable, where girls are respected, where their rights are respected, where they are seen as, oh, a good potential, the, the first option is not to give the child out, but to say there is always another way.
Okay.
What is the other way? I want to talk about the back to school to deal with the teenage pregnancy. So Education Service is looking at the back to school policy, where pregnant girls, even though I'm pregnant, I've had a child, that doesn't end my education. I should still be able to go to school after I've had my baby, and still be able to be what I dream I want to be.
Definitely.
And so these are some of the strategies that we are looking at and hoping that these will help resolve the issues. But like I said, there are many more other issues than just child marriage, the trafficking, the child labor, the violence, the corporal punishment that is almost 90% in this country, and keeping children out of school. While I started in your studio, I heard the interviews that were done on the street, and some of the people saying that it's because of the children's rights that now our children don't respect, you know. But I think that it's also because our teachers do not have the alternatives. What are the other ways of bringing up children rather than beating them? What are the other ways of speaking to children rather than being abusive? Because we do know that these do have an effect on children.
And even the question is, does the beating
resolve it?
Does it resolve the issue?
No, it doesn't.
It even it hardens the child the more.
That violence begets violence. So research is showing that you are getting more violent communities because they think that's the only way to resolve issues. We bring them up to think that way. And so that's how we are just going in a circle of
coming back to zero.
Coming back to zero.
All right, Christopher, I mean, she hit the nail right on the point, and I'm so happy that she made mention of the fact that our cultural practices, our social norms play a key role, and that if we have a society where the family thinks that the child's right is very important, we need to respect the child. What is the other way in dealing with this issue rather than sending her to marry a man age her grandfather? Then we are making headway. But it all boils down to education. I know that your ministry has been doing a lot of things. I've heard the Minister Tiko Jaba talk about how she's so passionate about ending child marriage. What have you done so far? What is in the pipeline, if I can borrow the politician's words, in dealing with child marriage?
Okay. As Emilia mentioned, first of all, we have to get something, a document to guide the whole agenda. So we have come up with a strategic framework to know how we want to do it and who is supposed to do what. Because ending child marriage does not rest only on the Ministry of Gender. We have many other stakeholders. So that strategic framework is now ready to roll out. Thankfully, many of the NGO institutions have come up. World Vision launched something in Tamale, a very huge one, and then we are so grateful that they have taken this strategic framework and then they are running with it. What we are trying to do is to bring all stakeholders on board to be able to push this. So education, and we are also very happy that now there is a bit of girls going to school, SSS. Many times it's as if girls who cannot continue at the SSS level are married off.
Are the ones
yes.
who fall prey
So
to
now that there is free SHS, we are hoping that that excuse will be a thing of the past, because education, once the children are in school, it is very possible that their parents will see the future very near to them than when they are out of school. So the other social interventions, as Emilia mentioned, we are hoping that when we institutionalize these interventions and they become part of us, then the issue of poverty, the issue of schooling, other issues, cultural issues will all come down, and then we'll be able to make a headway.
Well, you talk about free SHS, which is very important, but of course, don't forget that there are other girls who simply don't want to go to school, whether it's free or not. So also we need to motivate such children. But more importantly, we're here talking about laws that needs to work. And then it brings about the conversation of collaboration. I know this is a coordinated effort and it's interdependent. I mean, you do your part as a Ministry of Gender. UNICEF plays its part with its research and all the support. I know that the police, DOFSU, all have to play a part in the social social welfare department. All of them have a part to play in this. How is the collaboration like? Because if some of these things keep increasing and we keep on asking questions and we don't get answers, the question is, okay, so who should we blame for what? Should we blame Ministry of Gender? Should we blame the police? How do you collaborate to ensure that these nice, fine laws you're talking about really work?
Exactly. In the beginning, I mentioned that there are 3 approaches. 2 hangs on the ministry or the government machinery. The 3rd one is on all of us. You see, the government will have to make sure that we have very good laws and policies. Secondly, that all the institutions that you are talking about work together very well, and then the services they render really reach the target audience. Now the 3rd is the social change. You see, behavioral change. No matter how good the law is, we have to comply with those laws. And that is what we say, that if the children are not married off, if somebody doesn't take that decision, if somebody loves that child enough to make sure the child goes to school, then we'll have no issue at all. So the major stakeholders we have are the parents and the caregivers. And that's why our main point is that after the laws, after the institutions and all that have been strengthened and all, we want to encourage every parent, every caregiver to also play a very good part. Mind you, the Children's Act gives the mandate of the care of the child solely to the parents. And the government will only come in when the parents fails to do what they have to do. And so the government is more or less playing a complementary role in this respect. So we are expecting that every parent, every caregiver will be responsible enough, and that the beautiful laws and the policies we have will be complied with, and that the services that other institutions are also rendering, the girls and then the children will also access those services. And I must agree, we don't have the services everywhere. And we don't have the quality we need.
That could be problematic.
It is actually, but we are improving. The population keeps on growing and growing, and we are not meeting the size of the population with the services and all. So we have some districts that do not have DOFSU, that do not have some hospitals and all that. So we agree that there are some gaps, but if we all come together and then take care of the children we are bringing forth, then we'll be good.
All right. Can I just add to that? Because we talked about coordination.
Right.
I think that Chris just missed it, but it's about the National Coordination Committee. And so the Ministry of Gender has a National Coordination Committee that brings together national stakeholders. This is replicated at the regional and in some selected districts, where stakeholders come together and they discuss what are the issues, what's the evidence, what are the advocacy issues, what can we do. So that's on the coordination. But then I also want to talk about behavior and social change, which he says is critical.
Right, very
and
critical.
We do know that we talked about the ignorance of it, we talked about parental irresponsibility. It takes a community to bring up a child.
Right.
And I didn't mention it, but it's one of the contributing factors. When I was growing, it's the whole community that is concerned about you. And so you are going wayward, the other community, your neighbor, everybody. Formerly, if a child, a parent died, children will still be taken care of. Now you put them in orphanages. We even put them there when their parents are not dead.
Right.
And yet we know that the family is the best place for a child to be. And so the behavior and social change, there's a communication strategy that the government of Ghana, he talked about the policy, the child protection, child and family welfare policy. Within that policy, the local government, specifically the Department of Community Development, is leading in the behavior and social change. And tomorrow, as part of the World Children's Day, as part of 16 days of activism, as part of the World Against the Prevention of Child Abuse, the government of Ghana is launching a social drive. While the interpersonal things are going on in communities, community development, social welfare, people, NGOs are going into communities and dialoguing with families and communities on how we can together bring up our children. There will be a social drive launch tomorrow by the government, and it will be graced by the Second Lady, Her Excellency Samira Bawumia, and it is looking at all Ghanaians rallying together and taking action. Rightly said, the numbers are going up. We need to accelerate our effort. We need to, the laws are good, like he said, and I'm sure you are concerned. The laws are there, but the cases are going up. What can we do?
Is the law not working?
It is action we all need to take. So it's tomorrow's program is more like a rallying call on everyone, all Ghanaians against child abuse. And when we say Ghanaians against child abuse, it's not only for my child, but all the children of Ghana. We need to make Ghana a better place for children to grow.
It's quite refreshing, I mean, to hear that it's a collective responsibility. It is our duty. It's not only yours, not only Chris's. All of us must come together to deal with it, because it's a canker affecting national development. But I was also very glad when you spoke about how we should rope in children to be part of what we do for them. We shouldn't always think for the children. The children must be part of the decision making, and exactly what they've been calling for on Children's Day today. So let's take a break on PM Express. When we come back, we'll hear from some children and their requests to government.
I want to see an Africa with so much more participation from the children, because they shut the children down as if they don't know anything about what's going on. So I want to see an Africa with children bringing up ideas to improve the Africa we live in, so that we can all live as one nation.
Or she's probably worried about children being shut down. Have you ever experienced such a thing, being shut down as a child?
Yes, I've been experienced like many times. So sometimes if I've been shut down like that, it brings my spirit down, and it neglects me like from being like a human being. For sometimes if my mom or somebody shuts me down like that, I feel like, why? I'm not a human being or something.
So how do you think that you can also be brought up to understand that you can still come out with your message as a child and it will be accepted? How do you think that can be done?
Okay, what I suggest is parents should provide a listening ear for children, because they don't know what they want or something. Maybe something might need the child, but let's say you parents, you don't know, so she have to tell you. So I provide parents should have time for their words and listen to them.
Well, the kind of Africa I want for an African child is an African free from child neglect. Like, every child has free right to education, but some of the parents, because of hard expenses and school fees, they tell their children, I don't have money, so you have to stay home and work.
So to conclude, before you get to your youthful stage where you leave the child scene, what would we see Beverly do to lift up the status of the African child?
As myself, I really love singing, so I would like to give out my voice to let children know that as a child you can actually bring yourself out to express your talent.
What I'll do is I'll help them, I'll advise them, because everybody is unique. Because you have something hidden in you and you have to bring it out.
Children and mothers on the TV and the news. and for that matter, I started a project that saves Somali children from hunger in 2011.
How exactly did you start Save the Somali Children?
I did an activity in the Accra Mall, a donation activity for people to donate. Also, anytime I had a chance to appear on a TV channel, there was a special bank account created for that purpose, so people were donating into, and also had few amounts of money from philanthropists, organizations, churches to support.
So apart from that, what did you do next?
I embarked on other campaigns, Save Our Blood Banks, where I engage adults in donating pints of blood to the regional hospital. On the 1st of September 2012 for Pink FM. I'm currently running a national school gardening competition for first and second cycle schools, which I started last year to promote agriculture and food security.
So what would you say to other children who probably do have such ideas? They have also conceived them but cannot birth it out.
They should consult their adults, their parents or school teachers, and they should not quit. When they have the passion for it, they should keep fighting it, and they'll get there.
So if you have the opportunity to sit with lawmakers and tell them just one thing that you like to see in the African child in the next decade, what would you tell them?
African mothers should be well treated for their children to be better.
So you heard the children telling us what they really want us to do, and one of the interesting points I picked, they're talking about parents who should have a listening ear to their children. They want children to have time for their words so they can understand their needs, and they want their rights to be respected. And I think it's on the right, it's in the right direction, Emilia.
It is in the right direction. Children are humans like everyone, and that's why, they must be respected, just like we all expect as adults to be respected. It is the reason why I think that one of the key strategies of going forward is to ensure that children are participating in their protection and development. So we need to begin to engage them more to find out. If girls are now going off with men and their own colleagues and cohabitating with them and calling it marriage, we need to engage them more. We need to engage them in decisions. Okay, if you are saying that, we are saying that you don't want me to talk to you in a harsh way. How would you want me to talk to you?
Yeah.
And it's a joint responsibility.
Yeah.
When we talk about rights, we also talk about responsibility. When we talk about rights of children, responsibility of children is also there. So the child should not be talked to in an abusive way, but the child himself should also be respectful. Yeah. So it goes hand in hand.
Yeah.
The right of the child to education, but the responsibility of the child to then go to school and learn.
Right.
You know, the right of the child not to be married off this time, but the responsibility also on the child then to focus on her studies as well. And so it's a joint thing. And I think that the more we engage with children as well, the more we know what they would be part of the solutions and the strategies in dealing with
knowing
these.
very well that once you know the problem, then you can develop a strategy to dealing with it.
And being a professional teacher, I know very well that when you engage children and they are part of the decisions on how they want to be treated,
it even works better.
It works better.
Because then it won't be like you're imposing it on them.
Then the
we both
responsibility
reached
is on
an
them.
agreement, and so we must,
exactly.
fulfill our promises.
It's always negotiated, and it's always, and I always give myself an example. My sons like to play football. 6 o'clock, you're at home. You don't come home at 6 o'clock tomorrow, you don't go to play. Okay. You are late by 5 minutes, no playing.
You see.
And because they want to go tomorrow, they would always get home on time.
So
it's a,
I think one of the ways is to actually get what they like.
Yes.
To always use it in getting them to do what you want.
Exactly.
And I think that has worked perfectly.
Yes.
I want to find out from you how government seeks, or your ministry would intend to push for the achievement, or achieving these children their request. trying to get parents and trying to make sure that what they're looking for, they really get. But first, Emilia, let's tackle the issue of how these kind of abuses affect the children. We're told it affects their mental development, it affects psychologically, physically, and a whole lot. Socially, they are affected by some of these abuses. Let's look at how dangerous it is for these children.
Just think about that 4-year-old girl you mentioned, defiled by an 18-year-old guy. Just think about that. Look at, it's not just the physical, it's also the emotional. Do we know what we've done to that child? Damaged her for life.
For life.
Killed her dreams. And that's what we do to children. These abuses affect them. Think about that child who should be in school but is on the Volta Lake. And they are used to dive and they go in there and they die. Think about those children who are beaten mercilessly in school till they don't want to be in school. I know people who said, I wanted to be a doctor, but because my teacher, I didn't know mathematics. My teacher beat it out of me. They don't want to be part of it again. And I'm sure some of what I'm saying resonates with us.
Yes.
Think about me being told every day I am Abua Kwasia. And I grew up thinking I'm really an Abua Kwasia. I remember I used to ask, a teacher told me I had a big nose. And so I kept asking and covering my nose all the time, so it's in the mind. And that's what we do to our children. And these are the children who are going to become adults. You get me? Yeah. So what adults, it's our tomorrow we are damaging when we do this to children. So in a nutshell, it affects them physically, it affects them emotionally, it affects them psychologically. Some of it leads to death, some of it doesn't lead to death, but then at the end of the day, it damages them for life. It kills their potential and it kills their dreams.
That's very sad to hear.
And again, just to add something small to that one, if you are talking about social mobilization, we start with the children. Whatever we want in future, for the future of the country, is the children we fall on. And if the violence, if you are meting out violence, punishments, and other abusive situations on them, then we are sure that we are mobilizing them to become champions of violence. So the earlier we think about looking at all these things over again, the better it will be for us. Otherwise, there will be no point in our history that we can say that we are really, we have stopped violence. Ghana is number 3 when it comes to violent punishment in the whole world.
That's not encouraging.
It is not. It is not. And all the other, the first 2, as I checked, are all African countries. You see, and it is not something we should be boasting of at all.
All. And so let's look at these requests by the children. They want their parents to listen to them. They want their parents to, understand their problems so they can address them. They want their rights to be respected, among others. How do you intend to push for this agenda for the children to get their request granted?
Yes. So what we do is that we first of all will have to empower the children themselves to start respecting each other, whether in school, in the communities, wherever they are. You respect each other, because if you want somebody to respect your rights, you also have to respect. In schools, the figures for bullying is also increasing. So you ask yourself, if we are crying that parents should not beat or teachers should not beat the children, then why are the children beating themselves? Yes. So we are also empowering them to know that violence, it doesn't matter where it comes from. Once it is meted out, it is not good. So that is one. And also sensitizing all Ghanaians. That's why this campaign, Ghana Against Child Abuse, we are so happy it is happening. That we want to, this movement is supposed to make everybody aware that there are other alternatives. I mean, instead of hitting, there are other alternatives, so that it will, this agenda or this movement will help the parents know the other alternatives in order to respect their children. And whenever we are talking about child rights and respecting the children's rights and all that, many people say that we are spoiling the children, we are becoming unnecessarily protective and all that. No, it is just to protect the dignity of these children. Like we cited this 4-year-old girl. I mean, if it had not happened, nobody knows, I mean, the future of this girl, and we still believe that this girl has a future. But then, I mean, the ordeal this girl is going through. So if we are saying parents should respect the rights and protect the rights of these children, all we are saying is that send them to school because they are right. Make them have a very conducive environment in the home to learn. Their health issues should be taken care of. These are the rights we are talking about. So it is the encouragement to all parents, all caregivers, that we have to take care of our children.
So Children's Day, very interesting theme for today. I was very happy when I saw the theme for this year's celebration, Stop Violence Against Children. It's just straightforward.
It's straightforward.
How do we achieve this?
I think that Chris has said some of it. I mean, of course, we need to engage more, we need to talk more, and we need to we need to come to that realization that there's always another way. Another way. Someone says, it's a global village. I heard one of the people on the street say that that's how we were brought up and that's how it should be. But the world is changing. More research is coming out and showing the effects what all these violence have had, even on the brain of the child. In the child's development, learning, cognitive abilities in class. Sometimes we do not understand why we say the educational standards have fallen. We do not know it has a bearing on their protection and how we treat them. Okay, so they are closely linked together, and that's our human resource we're talking about. And so we need to engage more with families. We need to go engage more with children. We need to take a stand, to speak against it, not only to watch and say that, okay, that's not my child, but knowing that Ghana can be a better place when I'm concerned about all that goes around me. Right. It shouldn't just be about my child, because that child is a Ghanaian child. So it is all Ghanaians against child abuse. Definitely. And I think that it's a movement. It's not just a call just for me. It's a movement we all must join and take the pledge to speak and take actions that protect children better.
Many thanks to you, Emilia. And all too soon, the time flees so fast, especially when we're discussing very passionate issues like this. We don't want the time to fly, but that's where we end the discussion on PM Express tonight. But certainly that's not the end to stop violence, stop the violence against children conversation. We'll still have to be talking about it wherever we find ourselves. Let's stop it anytime we come across it, and let's put it at the back of our minds that it is a collective responsibility. Your quota, my quota, until we achieve the desired results. My name is Aisha Ibrahim. God willing, tomorrow same time we'll be here doing it all over again. Many thanks for your time. I'm out.